Story 1. Am I the a-hole for taking back the beer I bought for a party from which I was uninvited? This happened just a few hours ago. I'm a 19-year-old man, and the people calling me an a-hole are 18-year-old men and women. On Thursday, a person I had a major crush on in high school, but who rejected me, messaged me out of the blue. She had never contacted me without me contacting her first, and at one point I realized she had had me blocked on social media, and so I found it odd that she was suddenly being friendly. After sending a couple of greetings/questions about how I have been, she said that she was going to have some people over and wanted to know if I would get the beer. The drinking age where we are is 19, and she and the people who were going to chill were all 18. The liquor stores in my area all have cards. I thought it was silly that my being a month older meant I could buy liquor and they couldn't, and so I said I would love to go. She said, "Thanks, I'll pick you up at 7. 7 o'clock rolled around and she texted me to say she was in front of my house. I went out, dressed and ready to chill with some people, and she drove me to the liquor store. When we got there, I asked what beer she wanted me to get, and she told me to get Budweiser. I hid my disappointment as well as I could, but it was her party, so I went in and bought 2 cases of 24. I got back in the car and said, "Let's party." And she was eerily quiet. I noticed that she wasn't driving toward her neighborhood, but rather back towards mine. I thought she had moved or something, but didn't want to press the issue. When she turned down my street, I finally figured it out. She was being purposefully vague about the invitation because she wanted me to get the beer, but she wanted a way out when she told me I wasn't actually invited in the first place. She stopped in front of my house, leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thanks," in her best voice. I deadpanned her and asked when she was going to tell me I wasn't invited. She feigned surprise and said that she never intended to invite me in the first place. I sat in silence for a long, awkward minute, picked up the beer, and walked toward my front door. She got out of her car and frantically tried to re-invite me to the party, but I told her that what she did was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. I opened my front door, slammed it a bit too hard, and came back to my room. Now I'm sitting here drinking absolutely unpalatable pea water, and I have text messages from all of her friends and her asking me why I'm being such a D. I don't think I'm the a-hole for reacting the way I did, but if you haven't figured it out, I'm not amazingly social, so I'm not sure. Am I here? You are most certainly not the a-hole. You are someone who was used for their ability to buy alcohol when they couldn't, and they're absolute pricks. I'm very sorry that they humiliated you like that, but if it's any consolation, the opinions of people like that are not opinions that you should care that much about. Screw those people. I would never want to be in the company of such massive a-holes. Thank you very much. But the thing I'm maybe more sorry about is the fact that now you're stuck with a bunch of Budweiser. I mean, look, I'm not a snob. I enjoy plenty of on tap American domestic beers just fine. Not Budweiser. That really is just the worst part of this whole story. Story 2. Entitled Antivaxers cause over half my class to catch chickenpox, except a thank you. This happened back when I was in kindergarten, so some details are a bit fuzzy, but the story is very much real. When I was in kindergarten, entitled boy came to class one day with chickenpox. This wasn't a mild case either. The spots were angry and red, and within a few hours, a couple of our classmates were itching. My teacher had immediately called his parents, but they refused to pick him up, saying that it would be good for the other children to be around him and asking her to just leave him in the classroom. Now, only about half my class had gotten their chickenpox shot at that point. My parents were really good about getting my brothers and I our shots when we were supposed to get them, but as this was early in the school year, a lot of the parents hadn't got their kids vaccinated for chickenpox yet. To enroll in kindergarten at my elementary school, you have to either vaccinate your kids before the school year starts or within 3 months after. My teacher didn't know what to do. The office told her that if the parents wanted the kid to remain in class, she was technically supposed to let him unless other parents complained or the principal deemed him a danger to the other students. The principal was over at the high school on the other side of the city. He was principal of both. Weird Christian school thing. He would rush over when he could, but because of the school handbook, the entitled boy had to remain in class. My teacher asked the school secretary to call our parents, but she only had the home number for most parents and ended up with a lot of answering machines. So in kindergarten, everyone sat at table groups, and I was at entitled boy's table. He was carrying on like normal, yelling about Power Rangers. I was also the only kid at our little table who had been vaccinated. I remember feeling bad because one of the girls was scheduled to get her shot the next day. Talk about bad luck. A lot of the kids at my table started itching, and the girl who was supposed to get her shot the next day showed me her arm, and she had very faint pink dots. I don't know if chickenpox usually moves that quickly or if entitled boy just had a super mutant strand, but I was freaked out. I knew I'd gotten my shot that my mom promised would protect me from getting sick, but I was also 5 and still thought Stitch from Lilo and Stitch was a real being who lived in Hawaii. I was convinced that touching EB would mean I would die from chickenpox. So my friends and I all avoided him like he had, well, the plague. Finally, the principal burst in the room and kneels down in front of entitled boy. He asked entitled boy to please come with him so they can call his parents together. About 20 minutes later, the entitled parents show up. Crap hits the fan. Entitled mom starts screaming about how both she and her husband are licensed chiropractors. Sorry. And know all about the evils of vaccines and how vaccines give people autism. My oldest brother has Asperger's. If this had happened like 5 years later, I could have roasted the hell out of these anti-vaxxers for their stupidity. Entitled dad tries to calm entitled mom down, but also quietly tells my principal that as licensed chiropractors, they know and have seen how vaccines not only give children autism, but also make them gay. As a lesbian, I again could have roasted the crap out of them had this taken place years later. My principal firmly tells them that entitled boy needs to go home and can only come back when he is no longer sick. Entitled parents try to fight back, but my principal is firm, and entitled boy is dragged away from my class, begging his parents for a new Power Rangers toy. As the week went on, more and more of my classmates dropped like flies until only about 7 of us remained. We were the lucky 7 who had been vaccinated prior to the start of the school year, and since most of the class was homesick, we got to play a ton of games and pick up the book we wanted to read. Usually the class voted, and we 7 were often among the outvoted group. After a few days, my classmates began to return, not a red spot in sight. But it was a few weeks later that the real kicker happened. The entitled parents sent out emails to all the parents of kids in my class, painting themselves as the victims and heroes for exposing the class to life's natural vaccine. My dad got mad because even though I didn't get sick, thanks parents who are on top of my vaccinations, y'all rock, a lot of my classmates did. The entitled parents asked for a thank you from the other parents, and needless to say, they got no thank yous and only a lot of passive-aggressive remarks and glares in the hallway. Also, don't feel too bad for entitled boy. He turned out to be one of the biggest entitled D-bags I've ever met. I went to school with him all the way up through high school, and he's one of the worst humans I've had the displeasure of dealing with. The entitled apple doesn't fall far from the entitled tree. Oh, we're licensed chiropractors. We know all about vaccines and virology and all that stuff. I mean, look, I think chiropractors can do some good, but why are there always these chiropractors who think that they know, like, everything about medicine? It's just, it is a profession that seems to attract some real people that shouldn't be near medicine. Vaccines are good. Get vaccinated, folks. Also, I will relate my own little story. When I was a kid, it was 3rd grade, I got the chickenpox, because back then that would have been the very early 90s, I don't remember there being a chickenpox vaccine. My mom would have been on getting me that. But I got chickenpox. Hives all over, very, very itchy. And at that point in my life, all the other parents wanted their kids to get chickenpox, because if you got chickenpox, the younger you were, the better. And if you got chickenpox, then you were supposedly immune forever. I don't think that's actually 100% true, but it does help build up your immune system to it. And so my mom's friends brought their kids over, And little, like 8, 9-year-old me had to stand shirtless in the living room while the other kids had to like rub against me to get chickenpox. Many years later, when I got trained as a certified nursing assistant, I found out a little something. Chickenpox is spread through the respiratory system, not by touch. You breathe it in. And so I hated that memory. It's always stuck with me and just made me feel gross. And so I later, I don't hold a grudge against it now. I'm fine with it. But I went back to my mom and I'm like, you were in nursing at the time. Did you not know it was respiratory? Did you not know how weird that was? So that's, I guess, my weird story about chickenpox. Get vaccinated. Don't rub against other kids. It's weird and embarrassing. Story 3. Gave a grabby guy at the bar a taste of his own medicine. I was out at a club hanging with some girlfriends when a group of guys walked past. My girlfriend looked uncomfortable, so I asked what was wrong. She told me one of the guys in the group had grabbed her butt. I asked which guy and followed them inside. I went right up to the guy in question and asked, "Hey, did you grab my girlfriend's butt?" To which he smirked and responded, "Yeah, so?" I didn't even think before I was reaching down to grab him by the balls. Hard. He was screaming while I shouted, "Yeah, you like that? You like being grabbed by strangers?" I noticed his friends laughing and video recording, so I went up to one and dramatically tried to make out with him, which he was disgusted by. Security escorted me out, but they were laughing. They said what I did was hilarious, but they had it handled. They didn't kick me out, but told me it was probably best if I went home for the night. Edit, y'all are so annoying, nothing I can say will make you believe my story, so what's the point in trying? It's frustrating like F. I just wanted to share a funny story. If you don't believe it, that's fine. The people who were there know the truth. Edit 2, my boyfriend pointed out that I did make a mistake telling the story. Apparently security didn't find it as funny as my drunk self thought they did. He corrected me and told me that they didn't disagree with what you did, but they had it handled and said you should probably go home for the night. So, there you go. I mean, I don't think I would encourage anyone to do this as much as that guy deserved what he got. Folks, do be careful because you do that and you don't know if, fists might start flying, a fight. You don't want to get involved in stuff like that. But I will say to any guy out there who is grabbing women like that in public, without any kind of permission, I do hope that, someone randomly pops one of your nuts, just squeezes it to death, because, you're absolute scum, and I don't think that you should be allowed in public. That's really, really gross behavior. That's assault, is what it is. And, while I would never encourage anyone to assault you back, I do hope that karma somehow deals you a blow that you won't recover from easily. Story 4. Ruining a wedding reception for fun and profit. When I was 13, 8 years ago, my dad remarried after divorcing my mom 4 years before. Before the divorce, his fiancée had been his mistress. My mom is completely better off without him, and ignoring the fact that I wouldn't exist, I don't think she should have married him in the first place. Even if I think my parents weren't a good match, that's no excuse to cheat on your wife. This woman was effing vile in all sorts of ways. She constantly belittled me, made fun of the fact I needed to take pills for my mental illness despite being an effing pharmacist. I don't get it either. And was generally awful to me and my siblings. But she was a decade younger than my dad and reasonably hot, so he didn't give a crap how she treated us. The one time he actually listened to us about her is when they were thinking of having a baby, and my brother said he'd ask our mom to sue for full custody of us if they did. So anyway, they got married. I was a bridesmaid because that bee had no real friends. The other 2 bridesmaids were her sister and my sister. My brother was the best man because she didn't like my dad's best friend. He and my dad still don't talk to this day, even though the guy was like an uncle to me as a little kid. It was a wedding. Everything went normally. But at the beginning of the reception, before the first dance, we were taking pictures in front of a chocolate fountain, looking like the happy family we never were and would never be. I'm on the autism spectrum and have a problem maintaining eye contact. This extends to looking at a camera, so when we had to retake a photo because I wasn't looking, she leans down and whispers something in my ear. I'm not going to repeat it, but it involved the R word. I don't like saying it. Anyway, I kind of snapped and decided she was going to pay for this. No one noticed, or at least no one called me out, when I started slowly moving the chocolate fountain toward the edge of the table. When it gets to the edge, it makes contact with the back of that pure white wedding dress and slowly drips down. By the time she notices, it looks like she's crapped herself. But for all anyone else knows, this was an accident. She has no spare dress, and that stain is not coming out. So first dance, cutting the cake, speeches, everything. This woman has what looks like a crap stain on the back of her dress. It was a small revenge, but it was so worth it. What's supposed to be the happiest day of this stupid woman's life, and she's going to remember that stain every time she thinks about it. They never did get the stain out, and nobody knew it was me. Until now, I guess. Hi, family. If you're reading this, Susie, you're a C, and you deserve that chocolate stain. Hell yes, she does, and way to go on that. Look, we had a lot of stories on here that are about weddings lately. People are doing stuff at weddings all the time, and I'd like to try and be like, hey, respect a person's wedding, it's their special day. Not if they're this woman. Not if they're this woman using a slur like that to a teenage girl who's struggling. My gosh. Gross. Awful. This woman at least deserves a chocolate poop stain on her dress. I mean, good grief. What a miserable person. You want to know what would have made your wedding day better and you would have probably been a lot happier? Being nicer. Be a nice person, and then people will be nice to you, and you'll have friends and all that kind of stuff. I have so much trouble understanding how people can stand to be so miserable to other people all the time. Like, folks, to those people who are being that miserable to everyone else, are you not also feeling miserable because of it? Because a big part of the solution is just being nicer. Like, I don't understand that mentality. But to the person who wrote this, huge thumbs up to you, and I hope you're doing well. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.